Can you hear me all right? Okay, be ready. When someone told me I lived in a fantasy land, I almost fell off of my unicorn. So in 1979, an Indian reporter, most likely meant as a put-down, asked the former king of Bhutan about his nation's status as the least developed country. His Majesty replied that perhaps instead of focusing on gross national product, it might be more helpful to measure gross national happiness instead. This is reputed to be the first time anyone had parried the idea that we should begin looking at how happy a nation is vis-a-vis how rich it is. The king, by the way, was just 24 years old. Yet, his remarks have left a haunting mark on our global psyche. In 1987, 8 years later, the Financial Times of London finally published the first public discussion of gross national happiness. His Majesty the King of Bhutan, in an interview, told its correspondent, John Elliott, whether we take 5 years or 10 years to raise the per capita income and increase prosperity, it is not going to guarantee their happiness. A lot of things have to go into it, including political stability and social harmony, and the Bhutanese way of life, as well as economic development. Well, by the year 2000, his Prime Minister, Jigme Thinley, had established the Center for Bhutanese Studies and the Promotion of Gross National Happiness. Then in 2011, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously, and when did that last happen? Passed a resolution to place happiness on the global agenda and then drew up a global paradigm. Is it possible that poor nations can be just as happy as rich nations? Or perhaps material wealth can actually undermine happiness? Today, Bhutan is generally recognized as the happiest country in Asia and the 8th happiest in the world. And by this yardstick, Bhutanese are nearly 3 times happier than Americans who rank 23rd. Just what is it that determines how happy we are? We now recognize that wealth for individuals as well as for nations does not correlate well with happiness. Case in point, our president. With all his wealth, he is unquestionably one of the unhappiest, angriest men on the planet. Oh, and by the way, it's been estimated that 1 second of anger displaces 1 minute of happiness. And by that reckoning, 1 minute of anger displaces 1 hour of happiness. Bill and Melinda Gates, on the other hand, who are at least a dozen times or more richer than Donald Trump, seems to be content. And they revel in giving away billions of dollars in grants to help others. Could it be then that giving, not taking, nor even earning, has a lot to do with being happy? So my trip to Bhutan last spring was in part an exploration into happiness on a national level. From my work in Nepal over the past 20-some years, it is clear to me that Nepalis are miserable, and they rank near the bottom. I hope you're not Nepali. And it's clear to me that right next door in Bhutan live the happiest people in Asia. Nepalis want to immigrate and never move back to Nepal, while Bhutanese love their country, and if they have to leave, they inevitably return. In Bhutan, I was amazed to see men, old and young, gathered together in archery contests celebrating their shots. Believe me, it was medieval. A veritable throwback to Robin Hood and the Merry Men without that cursed Sheriff of Nottingham. It reminded me of the camaraderie one sees at a bowling alley. Everyone was having a good time. No one leaving dejected for having lost. No broken golf clubs. No heated arguments with umpires. No rioting soccer fans. Oh, how I recall the relief I felt when my daughter graduated from competitive tennis to just having fun hitting balls with friends. So then what is happiness? What is it exactly? How does one measure it? It seems so subjective. How can one even say who is happy, much less how happy? A friend of Bertrand Russell once found the philosopher and social reformer in a state of deep contemplation. Why so meditative, he asked. Because, Bertrand responded, I've made an odd discovery. Every time I talk to a savant, I feel quite sure that happiness is no longer a possibility. Yet when I talk to my gardener, I'm convinced of the opposite. Perhaps happiness is like pornography. We have trouble defining it, yet we seem to know it when we see it. And we even rate it from X to triple X. After all, sex can make us happy, especially when it's lovingly shared. Thus, while in Nepal, I began to take note of who was happy and who wasn't, and even how happy people seemed to be. For example, one of our female students, Nehemiah by name, although badly hunched over due to a congenital spine deformity, always lights up the room when she enters, smiling with her twinkling eyes wide open. I first met Nehemiah when her mother brought her to me because one foot deviated laterally from the other, and she was just 4 or 5 years old. It was an easy diagnosis if you looked up. You could see the torsion of her spine, called kyphoscoliosis, and I referred her to a children's charity hospital outside of Kathmandu, where I had volunteered some years before. They couldn't correct the spine until she stopped growing, of course, but they could prevent it from getting worse and impinging on the spinal cord, causing permanent paralysis. So she was immediately worked up and operated on for a temporary fix. Now, 14 years later, little Nehemiah has finished growing. She's completed the 10th grade and is now having a 6-month break before starting college. So she spent hours together. Nehemiah and I spent hours together seeing doctors and doing tests. During this time, I decided I would explore her happiness. Nehemiah, you are always smiling and you seem so happy. Are you really? She smiled and replied humbly, yeah, I think so. Well, are you ever unhappy? Oh, yeah, sometimes. Well, I knew she was being honest with me because even happy people aren't always happy, of course. But they quickly recover their happiness. Nehemiah, you have this obvious disability. You limp more than you walk. You can't run. It's hard for you to carry anything. Doesn't this bother you? And by the way, do you ever get teased or bullied? Not much. Usually when I change schools, but after people get to know me, they don't tease me. Soon, we were called in to see a doctor one last time. As they talked in Nepali, I could tell the doctor had been won over by her charms as well. Their exchange went something like that. Like this. The doctor said something and she laughed. And she said something and they both laughed. And back and forth they parlayed until finally they both stood up and shook hands, still laughing. It was then I realized I was vicariously enjoying their happiness. And I didn't understand a damn word. In other words, or in the words of Joseph Campbell, I found myself participating joyfully in the sorrows of the world. Yes, we know happiness when we see it, and it inherently makes us happy as well. So one of the happier people I came to know in Nepal is an older Tibetan woman in Kathmandu. who with her husband runs a popular bakery and restaurant for over 30 years. They seem very happy together. He does the baking and dreamily talks about his craft baking as an art form and becoming one with the dough as he needs it. Dolma, on the other hand, is always smiling and very congenial and loves talking with the customers. I rate them XXX happy. One morning I invited them to sit down with me and talk about what it is that makes them happy. I learned that the two of them refuse to stay open in the evening. That's when business is best. Well, why not? Because they would be selling off their happiness, sacrificing their evenings together, their family time. It was clear that they love what they do and they love doing it together. The family is closely connected and mutually supportive. These are essentials for happiness. Well then, immediately after our interview, Dolma came running back to my table and showed me a text on her phone she had just received from a friend. Talk about synchronicity. It read, "Always try to represent yourself as happy, simply because it becomes you. Then gradually it becomes your habit. And finally, it becomes your personality." Well, from my own experience in practicing happiness, that is exactly what happens. But you must make it your habit, consciously doing it every day. It's been demonstrated through identical twin studies that 40% of your personality is malleable. Yes, you can change your personality. Moreover, you don't seek happiness for yourself, you have to pursue it by trying to make others happy. We know through nurturing that we are happy when we focus on taking care of others. Ask any mother. Ask any pet owner. Ask any gardener. Loving kindness produces happiness. Well, I'm generally happy anyhow, but I felt I needed to try and take up the practice of happiness because our students need to learn the joys of paying it forward. You see, after they graduate and are into their career, they must in turn support another needy child in school just like they have been helped. But I was at a loss as to how to best demonstrate the joy their sponsors experience in helping them. Most of us know that modeling is the best way to teach effectively. Those who say, "Do as I say, not as I do," miss the point entirely. So I set out each morning with a pocket of penny candy, looking around to make someone smile. Walking down the street, I deliberately tried to make eye contact with everyone. Yes, everyone who walked by me. I would look them in the eye and give them a smile. And lo and behold, I always got a smile back. I mean, every time without exception. And when I wink, those smiles got bigger. I might stop that person and hand out a piece of candy simply as a random act of kindness. He or she would then laugh or giggle. Not just the girls, but passerbys and merchants of every age. Beggars would flash big toothless grins at me. And one of the most amazing things, therefore, that I have learned in practicing happiness is that it takes incredibly little to connect and make others happy. Yeah, just a smile, a wave, a touch on the shoulder, a treat, an offer of help. Well then, after just a week or two of making others happy, I began to realize that I was noticeably happier than before. Honestly, and everything began to seem right with the world. Indeed, my personality was changing. In Nepal, there's a surfeit of people, vehicles, taxis, and motorbikes, and a dearth of parking lots and personal space. Most people are walking on the streets or cramped into public buses, so it is So it is easier than here to make connections with others if you choose to. Well, in this vale of tears, everyone wants to be acknowledged and affirmed. But most people are defensive and fearful of ridicule and rejection. They put up walls around themselves in order to isolate themselves. They walk around with their earbuds in and their eyes closed, bobbing their heads to the music. They play games on their cell phones or talk to safe people like friends or their parents on their phones without even saying hi to the person on the bus they're sitting next to. And so I made a conscious effort to make connections wherever I could. You see, it is very easy for a foreigner who is less restrained by customs to intrude and connect with a simple wave or a namaste. But a smile totally disarms them and they immediately smile back. They can't help it. Let me give you an amazing example of my intrusiveness. So, you remember Nehemiah? Well, she finally had her long-awaited spine surgery just a few months ago. She now stands straight and is about 5 inches taller. She is anxiously waiting for school to start and begin her studies. She wants to be a social worker or a lawyer. Well, a week after her surgery, she was being transferred from the surgical hospital to the rehab hospital about an hour's drive away. Subhash, one of our male student workers, came with me to the hospital to assist in the transfer. He and the nurse transported Nehemiah on a gurney to the spot just outside the emergency room where the ambulance was to be waiting. I then followed down with the mother, carrying bags of clothes and a rolled-up mattress. When we caught up with them, there was neither Subhash nor an ambulance. Just the nurse, faithfully standing by her patient. We must have waited 15 minutes until the ambulance finally arrived, and the nurse then helped transfer her into the vehicle. Subhash was back and we were ready to go. I then turned to the nurse, and I said, "Thank you," and I handed her a penny candy. What was once a stone-faced drill sergeant of a nurse became a sobbing little girl. She uttered something, and I instinctively hugged her, strictly taboo in that culture, and certainly unprofessional. Still she sobbed, so I rocked her a bit and finally applied a kiss to the top of her head and said, "Tika," meaning, "May the gods bless you." I then stepped back, and the poor dear was wiping her eyes, but she was all smiles, laughing over how embarrassing her display was. Well, what do you know? She was happy. She then turned to Subhash and said in Nepali that she had been a nurse for 30 years. And this was the first time anyone had ever thanked her. Subhash was almost near tears and later confessed he'd never witnessed such a strong emotional reaction. But Nehemiah was smiling as always. Well, that would be the end of this story. Except the nurse and I had two subsequent encounters. The first time was at the end of the day, and she was walking out of the hospital gate when our eyes met. She giggled and said, "Chocolate?" I laughed, reached into my pocket, and passed it over. She chuckled with delight and waved, "Bye-bye." Then again, a few days later, she was coming down the hospital stairway, crammed with people as I was going up. Our eyes met. And she put her hand over her mouth and quietly giggled again as she passed by. And I giggled too. And so there you have it. Proof of just how cold and insensitive we humans are much of the time, but also how just a little gesture of kindness, such as saying thank you or a penny candy, cannot just make one stay, but give warm, lasting memories. So be kind to each other. Everyone is having a hard day. Well, now I'm back in the States, and I continue making eye contact and smiling wherever I go, and I get the same results. Yes, I even pass out candy to those I suspect need a lift. Anyone need a lift? Right here. By my second week back, I finally got up the courage and was ready to try out this technique on panhandlers at the street corner, as I did this morning, even in Tucson. Just like in Nepal, would they be offended if I don't hand over $1? So here comes this big burly guy with a hard luck sign walking up the line of cars without collecting a single handout. When he got to my car, I rolled down the window and I made eye contact and I smiled and I gave him 2 teeny-weeny bite-sized Snickers. And I said, I hope this makes your day a little brighter. He perked up, rolled back and gave a big smile and said, oh man, this is just what I needed. Thanks. And this morning, same reaction and a big thank you. I said to myself, wow, just what he needed. Look at that joy. And not just his, but my own. So I now go out of my way to pass by people soliciting on corners, simply to hand out a little candy. No one has yet thrown it back at me, disgruntled. Whether they're having a good day, raking it in, and I doubt it, or not, they are suffering deep, damaging indignities by begging in public. Well, it's no wonder then that they always light up with a bite-sized candy bar. They know they have been acknowledged. Fighting for social justice is often vague and abstract. Too often, it's impersonal. But most often, it doesn't even reach the little guy. But that is precisely what is needed, person to person. Well, I wanted to relate my experiences to you because practicing happiness is so simple and so helpful. Afterwards, there will be a talk back right here after your coffee, and I invite you to hear how and why we teach our students and their parents in Nepal about happiness. We now, in fact, call ourselves the Happiness NGO. So let us find ways to practice happiness and participate joyfully in the sorrows of the world. But here's one way. Outside the doors to your right, there are candidate Nepali children posted on a display board at the back, who are all from destitute families. They have been carefully screened and selected because they are tops in their class and they want to serve others, but they are in desperate straits. $1 a day, that's 2 candy bars a day. Along with writing and receiving 2 letters a year, supports them in private schools as they ascend to become professionals. Yet, professionals who will serve others. They will also sponsor a needy child or 2 or 3 in school on their own. And they will help reform Nepal and grow its gross national happiness. People sometimes ask me, so this is what you do? Walk around passing out candy? No way. I live in fantasy land, and I ride a unicorn to spelling dragons. Thank you. Namaste.